Okay, there we go. Hi, how are you doing tonight? Uh, Perfect. Okay. Well, welcome. Um, Welcome to the channel. Today, this is going to be a table talk about what I would say would be like one of my favorite like fan made game systems, which is Pokemon Tabletop United. And I would say you were probably like at least currently one of the better content creators for that. Yeah, yeah. I always suck at like introing things, and just a quick rundown of who you are and things like that would be best.
Streamer, Pokemon Gala Darkness, Wind Waker, Dead Cells, Dwarf Fortress, all of that stuff. But I've always had an interest in tabletop stuff. D&D being the biggest,
Mm-hmm.
Warhammer, all that kind of stuff. And so for about a year or so, maybe 7 months, I ran a D&D game just on stream or just on Twitch. I didn't record it and put it on YouTube. And then obviously I have a big interest in Pokemon, so
Yeah.
I started looking into Pokemon tabletop systems, and originally I had found one. I actually don't even know if it was PTU or not.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of lost the link or the file to it, and so I just kind of shelved it and didn't think about it. And then one day, I think one of my players brought it up, Pokemon up to me, and from basically we ran like a test session in December, and kind of since then we've just about every week we've been running a tabletop session,
Oh,
PTU.
that's good. How long have you been playing PTU? You said since December of last year.
Yeah, we had like a single session in December. I think our maybe our 1 year anniversary of playing PTU
Okay.
happened 2 weeks ago. I want to say something like that.
Okay. Okay. That's actually really good. Um. So can wow, I can't talk today. I can't talk. Would you want to go over like the basics of the Pokemon Tabletop United system compared to like what most people are more like knowledgeable about, like D&D or even Pathfinder?
Sure. So I have a very short tutorial series, and I kind of go over it in my first thing, at least just a little bit. Uh, but BTU is very different from your traditional first party like tabletop kind of stuff. One of the biggest things is obviously you control more than just one um, character sheet. Obviously, you have yourself, your trainer, and then you have your Pokemon. So maybe if you're coming from being some type of ranger with pets, maybe. But the biggest difference is going to be uh, the way the class system works.
Mm-hmm.
It's I've had somebody describe it to me. I've never looked into it, but it's closer to the Star Wars tabletop RPG in terms of you don't have a paladin, you don't have a ranger. Instead, the class is more of a bundle of features.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in D&D, you have alert, you have sentinel, polar master. All of those would be uh, maybe throw those under fighter, and then instead of automatically gaining them, you choose to take them.
Mm-hmm.
This game also, or this system, is definitely very pro multi-class, for sure.
That's kind of what I when I dug my feet into it, that's kind of what I noticed as well. That the class system is more like feat trees than an actual like class itself.
Mhm.
And like the way it is set up is like you can't just like bum rush this whole tree because of requirements of like certain skills requiring certain features requiring certain skills at certain levels that you don't have until like later into the game. So you basically are forced to multi-class.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. So yeah, how much? So I do a lot of like prepping for my D&D games and stuff like that, and it takes me quite a bit. But I know that you usually like use Photoshop for your stuff, right? For
Oh,
your
yes.
for
Yeah.
battle maps and stuff like that. How much time and effort usually goes into that compared to like
S-
regular D&D type of prep?
So, making my own maps and I will definitely say it probably doubled my workload. When I did D&D, obviously you just go to Reddit
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
or go to Google Images. Maybe go to a couple Patreons. I know I used to be subscribed to a ton of them.
yeah.
Um, so I definitely know. I subscribe to the lazy DM's way
Mm-hmm.
of prep. So what used to take an hour now takes two if you don't count making the map itself,
Yeah,
because I take maybe 4 5 to even 6 hours to make a single map,
yeah.
depending on what it is. If it's just a standard straight up and down route, yeah, that can maybe take like 2 hours.
Okay. And what about like NPCs? As you were saying, it's like even just one character would have like a team of Pokemon, but NPCs you have to think of NPC itself and then their team, right?
For sure. Thankfully, I think at some point I got from maybe a humble bundle, or maybe it was just on DM's guild, a universal NPC generator.
Okay.
So that thankfully kind of takes over in terms, at least for like motivations. Sometimes they have to be changed because it
Yeah.
is a universal one. So you're not off to fight a dragon. Maybe you're there to tame, a Charizard or something.
Yeah.
Uh, but when it comes to my NPCs, if they're not super special, like say a gym leader, but if it's somebody they're going to talk to, they're going to be actually have a focus on 1 to 3 classes. So, for instance, uh, one of the recurring villains in my campaign, her name is Ava. She is a she's a trickster and a psychic. So she has a focus on those kind of things, and she doesn't
Hmm.
really dip into anything else.
Yeah. And for like the gym leaders and stuff like that, how much time do you typically like go into prepping of not only their teams but also like the battleground itself?
So I prepped all of my gym leaders basically probably after the third session. They
Okay.
were all completed and finished, and I would just adjust the levels on the fly. Um, so that didn't take too long because I had already, even before I had started, I had already chosen kind of their overall personalities and
Okay.
what type they were going to run. And for the gym like terrain itself, I'll be honest, I'm a bit lazy in that regard,
Hmm.
and they really are just tile set swaps of each
Okay.
other. I don't. I know that hazards are kind of important because it
Hmm.
spices things up a little bit. Putting rocks and rough terrain,
Yeah.
but I haven't done all that much because I just logic it as everything is done in some type of enclosed. stadium kind of thing.
Yeah, that's probably the best, especially if like your stuff doesn't really have to go into the terrain at all, in the sense of like
Mhm.
there's no creation of terrain or using the terrain itself. So I noticed that you use Foundry VTT. I love
Mhm.
Foundry VTT. What made you go with Foundry versus like any of the other virtual tabletops? Not just for like PTU, but also like D&D or things like that.
Mhm. So I originally, just as many people, used Roll20. I kind of stopped using it when we started running into issues with it, and obviously it was kind of becoming a bit of a drain on my wallet. Obviously,
Yeah,
I was paying the yearly fee for it, whether or not I was playing. The reason why I went with Foundry is I was originally looking into Fantasy Grounds, and
yeah,
and even honestly even Tabletop Simulator. I was looking at those two. But when I kind of realized that the everyone would have to buy the software,
yeah,
I mean, I was like, I can't ask every possible player, hey, you gotta fork over $40-$50.
yeah.
I'm
And
sorry, so.
and especially with like I do know that Foundry has like a top tier where only the DM has to have it, but it's like 3 times as much as the other tiers, so it's not really that feasible.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I'm always wondering what like Wizards of the Coast is going to bring out with their new virtual tabletop as well, and kind of like how that's going to exist in this ecosystem of virtual tabletops and things like
For
that.
sh- for sure, yeah. I've been kind of keeping a close eye on it. I'm not. I've mentioned on stream and in my Discord and stuff that I'm not the happiest camper when it comes to Wizards of the Coast. I have many complaints
Yeah,
about them, uh, but I still think if somebody's looking to just play D&D, I'm sure that'll be a very good tabletop for
yeah,
that, especially if there's somebody that follows rules.
yeah. Exactly. Um, so my big question with Pokemon Tabletop is like the number of people and the number of like Pokemon and stuff. How do you really handle combat with basically each player having 2 turns? Because D&D combat, it takes forever and there's only just one person a turn.
Right. So, definitely we've had times where combat takes absolutely forever. I think there was one gym battle that took 2.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that was with my gym restrictions, which is I have 3 players and I have 2 gym leaders. That's kind of my standard thing. So, one trainer, 2 Pokemon, so that makes 6 on each side of the field. Or gym leaders obviously get 3 Pokemon,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, obviously my best advice has always been just kind of know ahead of time. I know sometimes either being a DM throws a wrench into the works,
Mm-hmm.
or a player may use a move that pushes a pushes a Pokemon away or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's really just knowing your trainer. Thankfully, in maybe gym challenges, your trainer doesn't do all that much, but knowing what your Pokemon can do. I know 6 moves can be quite a lot, but
Yeah.
you gotta know them. And obviously, you always have your ace Pokemon,
Yeah.
so just gotta know.
Just gotta know. I think that
Mhm.
kind of like boils down to combat in almost any system,
Oh, for sure, yeah.
especially just to speed it along and things like that. Especially if you have multiple spellcasters in D&D, it just takes forever if they don't realize that their turn's coming up next. And they're like, oh shoot, I haven't really been paying that much attention. Let me go look at my spell list that I should know at this point.
Right. Definitely. And another thing that I do is I try my best that if there's maybe a question, we try our best not to sit there and look at the rules
Mm-hmm.
for a long time because that PDF is really big.
Yeah.
There was one time where I had a guest come on to play a trainer,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a question about, I think it was rollout and defense curl, because obviously that got updated with an errata, and we probably wasted 10 minutes because he's the type of person that he's not gonna let something go.
Yeah. Until he like figures it out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's like I'll maybe shove it off a rule lookup or something to one of my players. Definitely Seraphel is always kind of the best at that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I'll tell her, hey, we got to keep going. You look into this, move on.
Okay. That's good. That's good. And now this next question is like, so Pokemon is kind of like a sidestep from like your normal fantasy game and stuff like that, but it's still phantasmal in the sense. What kind of like what's the main difference in like coming with plots and ideas in PTU versus like Dungeons and Dragons, where it's like, oh, let's go fight this big bad dragon, right?
Well, I would say that there's a lot of similarities
Yeah.
than one may think about, because you could adapt any type of one shot and replace it with something else. I've done that a couple of times, but definitely sometimes you have to. I guess it really depends on how you may run your tabletop. I try to stick mine closer to the video games than I do, say,
Yeah.
the anime. So I don't mind having mine go a little crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean it does feel kind of weird sometimes because in D&D, obviously, the most common enemy is your goblins, your
Yeah.
kobolds, and your cultists. Cultists you can pull off pretty easily in PTU, especially if you may be a fan of some ROM hacks.
Mm-hmm.
The name escapes me. I think it's Pokemon Uranium. I think has cultists, or
There's
maybe it's
that,
Pokemon
and I
Sage.
think Pokemon Insurgents.
That's the one that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can definitely draw inspirations from those kind of things. But kobolds, I mean, maybe you could replace them with like maybe impidimps,
Mm-hmm.
maybe. So you just gotta, you can either reskin things or you just follow more a game or anime style approach.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of like my main thing is like the storyline is kind of important to my group and like D&D and stuff like that. And it's kind of like matching that up with PTU where it's like almost every single game it's set in the stone of like, let's go collect these 8 badges, defeat the Elite Four, and become champion. And it's like, what other stories could you tell in like this system beyond just that?
Mm-hmm. I was thankfully, one of my favorite Pokemon games is actually the black sheep of the series, that being Gala Darkness and its predecessor Colosseum.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to introduce, shadow Pokemon and create kind of a sub plot line with that created a kind of a proper type of urgency, in my opinion, because in the games it really feels like that there's not always urgency. Some of the older ones,
Oh yeah.
obviously there was much more urgency, like say Gen 3,
Yeah.
but perhaps the end of the world kind of thing. But yeah, obviously take inspiration from some of those games. They're
Yeah.
non-Game Freak games, but they're darn good.
They are. They are. I need to like. I think I still have my GameCube somewhere, and I still have like Colosseum. I just never real. I think I stopped at the Shadow Entei,
Oh boy, yeah, oh yeah.
and it's like I want to capture this, but I don't have the time to, and it takes forever to even get here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm just going through the notes real quick. So, what advice do you have for people that wanted to start their own campaign with like PTU or even one shots? Like, what are the major do's and don'ts with the system?
Mm. Uh, phew. Do's and don'ts, I honestly feel are pretty pretty standard to any system, in my opinion. I would try not to plan too far ahead,
Yeah.
because you know, all it takes is one player following a string that you didn't actually make to change things up.
Yeah.
Obviously, never. Sometimes you need to kind of rein in your expectations sometimes, because there's been times I've written some really good material for maybe an NPC to talk about, even, or have like even a proper monologue,
Yeah.
and it just gets skipped over. So never go too far. Again, it's why I subscribe to like the lazy DM's
Yeah.
guide way of doing things.
Where it's just like improvise as much as you can and then have broad strokes for like everything else.
Definitely, I wouldn't say full improvise. I would
Yeah.
definitely recommend just doing like a skeleton of stuff,
Yeah.
for sure.
Basically, point A and point B, but you don't know how to get between the two.
For sure, because
Yeah.
I know when I'm writing my stuff, I will put the header, the current town they're in, where they'll probably end up, and then I put the names of the NPCs if I've already written them,
Mm-hmm.
or I'll put in kind of like a bullet point of like there needs to be something here, and then I'll make a notable mark about the city or the town or the point of interest,
Mm-hmm.
and then expand from there. You know, one of my the session some people say is my best is one that probably had the least amount of prep, and that happened with both D&D and PTU for sure.
Yeah. So there's a lot of like optional stuff at like homebrew items that you can go like custom Pokemon and stuff like that. Is there anything like you regret giving your players at times?
Hmm. Uh, let's see. So, you know, surprisingly, I don't think I've done that bad of a job. My players really haven't used too many of the homebrew items.
Okay.
Obviously, I have one of one of my players mentioning the bone arm that they picked up one time, but I don't think that's too much of a problem. It's kind of a comedic effect. The only thing I can think of is maybe the badges being actual equipable items
Okay.
that not only give like +1 attack, +1 speed, on top of basically being another ability that they can use once a day, can definitely sometimes be a little ridiculous, but that's mainly because I haven't used it against them.
Yeah. Yeah. So how often do you actually like come up with like at very least like custom Pokemon? Because I've seen some like different sprites in your party's team boxes.
So there are, of course, the shadow Pokemon,
Yep.
which I made before the session started. There, I generated a list of. Well, actually, I'm not gonna mention how many there
Yeah, yeah,
are in
yeah.
total.
An X
Uh,
amount.
yeah, an X amount of them, and I kind of sprinkle them out. So those are the ones that kind of have a darker palette.
Okay.
And then I have what are called albino Pokemon, and they're kind of like shinies, but normally they'll have an egg move and maybe some boosted stats. And then on top of that, there is a custom. He's kind of a one of a kind. He's not a regional variant. Player has a ghost herdier,
Yeah.
named Blueberry or Blackberry, excuse me. And then, other than that, there is. I introduced, I think, 2 sessions ago, a regional variant of Macargo, which is a water steel type, I believe.
Okay.
Something like that. But I'm hoping to probably mix in more, maybe through the use of one-shots or when Campaign 2 starts.
And I haven't really been keeping up all that often. How far along are they through the story that you have planned so far? Like a percentage.
That's so they are probably this weekend going to collect their 8th badge.
Okay.
But they are. It really depends because they kind of bounce back and forth on how important they see the Shadow Pokemon stuff. So there's still all of that they have to take care of, and then the actual league battle. And I've hinted to them that there is something that's technically bigger than the Elite Four in being a champion, called Mount Glory.
Okay.
So, which they can either choose for us to do that as a separate thing, kind of an offshoot, or just call it there and say, "Hey, our trainers went and did that. Let's start a new campaign." It's up to them.
So at the end of the day, what kind of like made you want to start streaming PTU?
So, as I had kind of mentioned before, I was already doing streamer things.
Yeah.
And so when I was doing D&D, I picked that up because I love D&D and I wanted something to do that was a little different from being, video game streamer number, 9 million.
Yeah.
So at some point when we got into PTU, I was like, hey, I streamed D&D. I hope you don't mind. I would like to stream the PTU stuff, and everyone said that was okay. So it just kind of came naturally.
Yeah. And do you have any other ideas that you want to like continue with content creation of PTU, or is it just mainly like just streaming at this point?
So I would like to be able to do PTU one-shots. That's, because I get a lot of people that come through my Discord asking questions. They want to learn how to play, but sometimes the official LFGs for it, there's not many PTU DMs.
No, there really isn't.
Once again, it's there's more players than there are DMs.
Yeah.
So when I find time, I've been writing little one shots, kind of like running through maybe the Pokemon Academy kind of stuff, or just little things I've sprinkled out through the campaign that people seem to latch on to. But other than that, maybe start a second campaign with the same set of players, maybe a new one, because again, we play with 3 instead of the standard of 4. But I of course would like to sprinkle in some non-PTU stuff. I don't want to be stuck as the PTU guy.
Yeah, that's 100% fair. I mean, the other content creator that does PTU, the Loading Crew, you just go into their channel, you see that they do a lot of like non-PTU stuff, but it's still like adjacent. It's like, how do you make this? I think their main stuff is how do you make this character in D&D, and that's kind of like their jam. Oh no, it's what D&D alignment is this person?
Hmm.
Hmm. So yeah, it's definitely something that you can like balance the both and do at the same time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely know in the new year I would like to kind of up my actual um, content creation stuff because
Yeah.
it's easy. It's to an extent pretty easy to turn on a camera and talk, especially when you're not the only one there.
Yeah.
But for me to sit down and make a video is really hard for me, and it's why I've been sitting at 2 episodes of my PT 101 series for
Yeah,
so
yeah.
long.
I think that's my issue as well, is like I just can't stick to a script. Like I'll think of an idea, write like maybe 200, 300 words of it, and then like another idea will come to me and I have to write that. It's really hard to just stick to one and continue it. At least for me. Um but yeah. What other questions did we have? I think we hit most of them. Is there any questions in your chat?
Um, I don't, not currently. But if anybody has any questions, I'll gladly kind of like take them right now.
Yeah.
Because normally I get questions in obviously my Discord, and I try to answer them the best that I can. I could always maybe scroll up through my Discord and see.
Oh, a question did just come to me. Would you recommend playing PTU from virtual tabletop or like in person?
Oh, I would fully advise a virtual tabletop, especially Foundry itself, because of the actual game system. I do know that there have been people that say, "Hey, I've played this in person. It's not that bad," um, and I'm sure that it's not. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but PTU really benefits very well from automation.
Yeah.
It makes it so much quicker on the fly to adjust. Like for instance, the if somebody uses, I don't know, let's say steel worker on Delmise, it's way quicker to just think, okay, well, steel versus this typing,
Yeah.
adder, reduced by 1/4 or whatever,
Yeah.
instead of having to whip out a calculator or
Yeah. And there's from the 2 1-shots I've done, there's a lot of math involved, and just like the how they handle battling and like damage calculations and stuff like that. And that whole thing is kind of like something that me and my group are still like coming to terms with like, oh, we're all level 1 with 5 level 5 Pokemon. Why is this doing 30 damage to me? When like in D&D that's like you're dead 3 times over.
right, for sure. Yeah. Obviously, I think one thing that should have been written into the handbook was a damage average for the moves, so
Yeah.
you could just kind of like look at just quickly look. Oh, Hyper Beam on average does 40 damage,
Yeah.
and just call it.
Yeah, I think there's just way too many charts, and I think I know it's kind of like a complete game at this point where they're not really updating it anymore. But there's a lot
Yeah,
of like
no,
information spread out everywhere within that book when it should just be like, why are like abilities and moves in the core handbook when they should be in the Pokédex where you're looking those things up?
right. Yeah. Yeah. The writers are definitely fully finished.
Yeah.
From my understanding, I've heard that they actually hate the system that they created, or the monster that they created. I
Yeah.
think one might have actually called it that. So obviously, it'll be on the community to take care of that kind of stuff. I've talked multiple times that I would perhaps like to write my own
Mm-hmm.
version of it. Let's see. I do actually have a question here from Maximus. Let's see. What changes are planned to be made in Foundry to improve the PTU core rulebook? I'm not too sure about that.
Um, I know that at the very least the PTU community that's making the module is working on like a character mancer. If you ever done it on like D&D and stuff like that, which they have the baseline done for it, and I think it'll be really nice. I can see the framework for it, and it'll be really nice once it's complete. But that's kind of like their main thing that they're working on right now. And then a few other things that I can't really remember off the top of my head.
I know, I know that there's definitely probably permanently putting in, uh, because obviously sometimes things are not written very well,
Yeah,
in the handbook, and I don't blame anyone for that. It's kind of hard sometimes to
yeah,
word your things correctly. I mean, there's still that problem. Even D&D has that problem.
yeah.
But at some point, I think I've heard that the lead developer at some point will just make a judgment call and either set, something specifically, or even have it as an option that you can switch between on say how a ruling is
Yeah.
in terms of calculations.
Yeah, and I think Foundry allows a lot of customizability of the system itself and how you handle it as well. I would like to see a little bit more automation in a couple of things that I can't really. It's one of those things when I was playing through it last week that, oh, this would have been nice to have automated. That I can't really remember what those things are now. But like, there's a few things that Foundry could take to the next level.
Right. Obviously, I know that, like, for instance, poison will tick down automatically,
Okay.
but rain dish won't recover HP. Sometimes the rain and snow and
Sand effects and stuff like that don't work.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. There's another question. Do you think gimmicks, Mega Evolution, Z Crystals, Dynamax, Terrestrialize have a place in PTU? I've used most of them with little to no issues, but I found it contentious to bring them up in games.
I think that's more of a you question.
Yeah, because I know for a fact that I use Mega Evolutions
Yeah.
in my campaign, and by extension, Shadow Pokemon are definitely a gimmick as well.
Yeah.
Z Crystals, Dynamaxing, I think it really depends on not only the DM but what your players prefer. 'Cause
Yeah.
I love Mega Evolutions. I still, in my opinion, I know that some of them are broken and overpowered.
I
Obviously, go ahead.
I would have liked more Mega Evolutions in the main games. I think those are kind of like cool and allow more use for the more like forgotten Pokemon and stuff like that.
For sure, yeah. I do know, now that I think about it, we do have a Mega Breloom, which has not been used yet, but
Hmm.
the sprite is there, and I believe Seth has the Breloomite, so maybe we'll see it eventually.
Yeah.
And I think Spira has a Dynamax, or excuse me, a Mega Corviknight, which is basically just taking the Gigantamax form
Yeah.
or Corviknight and converting it into a Mega Evolution.
Yeah. And I'm sure, like, at very least, like most game systems, these you can take these ideas from the games and just like spread it more out towards things that don't usually have those, right? Like you were saying, like I don't believe there's a Mega Breloom in the games, is there?
Say that one more time.
I don't think there's a Mega Breloom in the games itself, right?
No, not at all. That
Yeah.
was a sprite custom made by one of my players, Seraphel, and then uh, Seth and I kind of workshopped the ability and how that would change the
Yeah.
stats.
Yeah, so those ideas are definitely something that can make your campaign more unique and easily more customizable for your party as well, right?
Yeah. Z moves, or yeah, Z crystals and Z moves. That's gonna obviously require, balancing
Yeah.
a Z move, because I don't think they're anywhere in the handbook or
No, because
uh
I believe the handbook was made before Z moves were an actual thing.
right, because they had to have the Alola Dex
Yeah.
expansion. That's right. Yeah.
And then they're like, we just want to put these moves in and just call it good for the
Right.
learn sets for those Pokemon.
Hmm.
But like uh the new gimmick from Scarlet and Violet is easily replicable.
Oh,
Uh,
very much so. It's
yeah,
so easy to add a typing to a Pokemon, thankfully.
yeah,
I wish it was a little bit easier, because obviously I don't want to have to go in and make a custom species.
yeah,
I would like it just to be kind of another drag and drop,
yeah.
or just like a plus symbol, and just say like, hey, you know, add steel, and then I can remove it at a later
Yeah, I kind
date.
of like how they're doing like capability, not capabilities, but like Poke Edges and things like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I think the thing that I would really like forward is like at the very least from the Foundry team, it's not Foundry team, but the system team is something like when you level up, it'll ask you, "Hey, it's your Pokemon is trying to learn this move. Do you want to actually put it on?" Instead of like, I believe right now you have to like double check its level in the Pokédex,
Oh yeah, for
find the
sure.
move, and then bring it in. When the moves are right there, you can easily just reference them, right?
Right, for sure.
And I think that would be a nice step in the character mancer of like leveling up and things like that.
Yeah. I believe we're both in that Discord. We
Yeah,
could maybe put in a
they pitch.
yeah, pitch or a ticket about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
See if it's possible in the with the coding and stuff.
Well,
But uh,
oh, continue. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, I just know right now they're kind of busy with trying to get that version 10 up
Yeah.
and running, since
Yeah.
so many people they see the stable version and they
Yeah.
go to download it, and it's
Yeah.
not very
I
stable.
I think that's my one issue with Foundry is you can't go back. You can't downgrade once you upgrade.
That is true. Let's see. My players have been wanting to transition from Roll20 to Foundry, but I don't even have the foggiest idea where to begin, and seeing your games has inspired me to pull the trigger. Any helpful tips or videos to get me started if possible? Well, it just so happens the person that I'm talking to,
Yeah.
Villainous Foundry,
Yeah.
happens to make that kind of content.
I do. Yeah, I have a couple of videos on like interesting modules that you can use. Now, some of them are mainly for like D&D specific, but a few of them can transfer over. There is a like top 5 best modules to get, which is mainly generic, so you can like add them into your stuff. And then another good content creator is Kobold DM. He's super awesome. Has a lot of videos as well that that is a great baseline to get started on. And then Oxium VTT is another content creator. There's a lot of content creators for Founder VTT.
For sure, yeah. And then obviously, when it comes to uh, PTU itself, there's my PTU 101 series kind of thing, which I'll hopefully be continuing in the new year.
Yeah,
Probably my next video will probably actually be probably more towards getting a session set up and
Yeah.
all of that kind of stuff. The modules that I use, because I use a ton of modules. Most of them are cosmetic,
Yeah.
like Dice So Nice and stuff like that.
Yeah. Dysonice is it's a must-have module. If you get Foundry, you have to have that installed. It just gives
You
that
got
it just gives that nice feel, okay? You get to see the dice rolling.
you got to give the Dice Goblin something
Yeah.
to look at.
Yeah. Um do you use Monk's active tile triggers at all?
I have the module. I
Okay.
haven't really used it much. I also have NPC chatter, but I
Okay.
don't think that's actually compatible with PTU at the moment. Mostly, again, like kind of like cosmetic stuff. I know I use. It's not Monk's active tiles. It's I forget the one that I know that a player will move their token to, and they kind of get teleported
Oh
to
yeah.
either end of the map.
There's like 3 different versions of that.
Yeah.
Um which is nice. Back in the day, like 2 years ago, there was a totally different module that you have to use that. That's now been just updated to Monk's active tile trigger, which
Oh yeah. Multi-level tokens is
yes.
what I use at the
Yeah.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. I think there's a lot of like automation you can do with Monk's triggers, especially with a couple of my like more immersive videos. I use it, like the demon summoning and the something in Waterdeep uses a whole lot of like automation from monks. But there is a few things that you can do, like even setting up gym battles and things like that,
Right.
with like
Uh,
entrances.
no, for sure. Would there be any quality of life modules or macros I should be aware of for PTU? So in terms of quality of life, obviously I like Arbron's improved HP bar
Okay.
because it's out of the box. It is compatible with PTU, and it will visualize the injuries in the health bar,
Okay.
so you can kind of tell how much health is actually being taken away by an injury. Other than that, obviously, in my opinion, kind of the standard ones like drag ruler is very useful. So you
Which
can.
I don't know if it's Drag Ruler's updated to version 10 yet. I think there is a fork of it somewhere that you can like go track down.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's one of the ones that I recommend that is needed for DMs is definitely Drag Ruler.
Something else I use, which you do have to turn off when you're actually playing in a session, is a drag upload.
Oh yeah.
Get over here. Very useful, but if your players are using the belt system so that they can pull out their own Pokemon, so they don't have to ask permission,
Yeah.
then you have to turn it off, because otherwise it kind of fights them because they don't have
Permission
it
to
tries to
drag.
create.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is the one problem with like the lesser known systems, because I'm sure like Pathfinder has the same issues, and like Star Wars and things like that. Is there's just not a lot of content creators of modules. Like I
Right.
want to say like 95% of modules you'll find is just like D&D focused.
Hmm. Yeah. In terms of macros, there's a couple that I use. So first of all, one of mine I use is actually just a rescaling macro, and that's because if you just get a large folder of Pokemon, a lot of times they're going to come out really tiny.
Yeah.
But other than that, there is a module for the the training stuff that trainers can do.
Okay.
You just they just click the button, and then it checks your command level and checks if you have the feature,
Okay.
and then it lets you select which Pokemon, and it does the math for you. The other one that I keep forgetting to give my players is basically a one-click Pokemon Center
Oh yeah.
or a heal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you click it, and it'll ask you if you're in a Pokemon Center or not, and then it will recover the amount of HP and injuries.
And stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I think you can maybe set up monks to do that as monks active tile triggers as well. Because I know there's like a heal function, but I'm not 100% sure if you can also like deal with the injuries and stuff like that. It really depends on how the system's set up, I guess.
Right. Now, I do know originally the PTU system itself, at least through, I forget what that module was called before they rolled it,
Yeah.
Move Master. Before
Okay.
they rolled that in, it used to have that one-click heal function as well. But ever since they combined the module into the system, it hasn't worked.
Yeah.
And trying to get this version 10 to be stable,
Yeah.
they've had to put that kind of stuff off to the side.
Most definitely. And I believe they just recently came back from vacation as well because of the holidays and
Yes.
things like that.
And if, because I know some people don't like to have too many discords or whatever, but you can either join
Mm-hmm.
that one to get updates on it, or my own Discord is kind of linked up to their announcements as well.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to get those announcements while also having to deal with my bullshit and listen. And but I also answer a ton of questions in my own Discord.
Yeah. And stuff like that is very easy to like find in discords, so it's really helpful to be in one of those discords that have PTU and stuff like that, especially when it's such a small community, like compared to like Pathfinder or even D&D.
For sure, yeah.
But yeah, any last questions?
Yeah, I still got a little bit of time. Thankfully, I had dinner before this
Yeah.
stream.
Yeah, I kind of need
Definitely
to
gonna
go get my own.
right, and obviously I'd like to answer questions before I break out my whiskey. So
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, it was really nice
Yeah.
talking to you.
It was great talking to you as well. Where can we find you again?
So I am TCMScooty, or they call me Scooty. Obviously, in my description and stuff, I have my Discord where I'm pretty much always active. I do kind of sleep during the day. It's kind of just because of my girlfriend works during the night, so I kind of had to switch my schedule to hers. But I'm always around on there. I do have a Twitter. I don't use it. I haven't used it in like 2 years.
Same.
Never been a fan of it. Obviously, my Twitch is still around, but I don't use it anymore. I would like to get back to multi-streaming. I actually did check my contract. I can actually multi-stream now.
Yeah.
And then there's my Patreon, which obviously I have everything on there is actually free. I don't tell people, come subscribe or whatever, put money up, but you can find all my maps there. I do make sure to help out the community with that. Join the Discord. Thanks for the link. Of course.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for being on Table Talk.
Of course, with pleasure.
Yeah. Have a good one, I guess.
All right, you too.
Yeah. I will hopefully see you around, and I look forward to your next stream, which will be this Saturday, right? Or are you not streaming because of the holiday?
As far as I'm aware, I think we should be good.
Okay.
I'll ask my players.
Well, take care.
All right, take care. See you around.
Yep.
See you.